When I first began in the bucket shops, I thought the money was in catching every swing. Buy today, sell tomorrow. Out quick, out clean. I thought if I could just grab enough small turns, the profit would pile up into something big. But you know what really happened? I made money, then I lost it. I made some more, then I gave it back. I was working like a man bailing water out of a leaking boat. Have you ever felt that way in your own trading? Always busy, always working. But when you look at the ledger, the pile doesn't grow. The truth I learned the hard way was this: the big money is not in the individual ups and downs. The big money is in the main movement, the long swings. And the hardest part of the game is not getting in, it's staying in. Anybody can buy when the chart says up. The real test is whether you can hold when every nerve in your body screams at you to take your small gain and run. Do you see what I mean? Most traders never learn that lesson. They grab at nickels and dimes and let the dollars slip away. They're afraid the market will take back the little profit they've got, so they sell too soon. Then they watch in agony as the stock runs away without them. Tell me, hasn't that happened to you before? You cut your profit because you were scared, and the very next day the move you were waiting for finally begins. And you sit there, watching it climb, and your heart burns. The reason it happens is not because the trader doesn't know how to read the tape. It's because he doesn't know how to master himself. A chart can tell you where the line of least resistance lies, but it can't make you hold when fear gets loud. That is your own job. I had to learn it myself, again and again. The hardest thing in this business is to sit tight and let your profits grow. I remember one of my first big lessons came when I was just a boy trading the bucket shops. I caught a move. I got in at the right time, and in no time I was showing a tidy profit. Then I sold, and right after I sold, the stock doubled. Do you think I was happy about the money I made? No. I was sick about the money I left behind. That's when I began to understand it's not enough to be right. You must be right, and you must sit. Can you feel the weight of that truth? The market does not reward the impatient. It does not care for the fellow who nibbles a little here, a little there. The market pays the man who can identify the main trend, and then wait, with a calm mind, while the world shakes around him. That is the great secret. And yet, how many can really do it? Do you think you have that discipline? When you buy a stock and it goes your way, the little profit you see is not the prize, it's just the beginning. A small profit is like a child. It must be allowed to grow. If you cut it off too early, you strangle it. That's why I always say, it's not your brain that makes you money, it's your character. Do you believe you have the character to hold through the noise? Now let me tell you something else. Most traders get nervous when the stock moves against them by a point or two, but that's not the time to be nervous. The real danger is when the stock moves in your favor and you feel so good that you rush to cash in. That is the trap. The tape whispers, take your profit before it slips away. And if you listen, you rob yourself of the one move that could have made your whole season. Haven't you ever seen a man ruin a winning streak by selling too early? The truth is, you must always keep the big picture in mind. The market is not made of minutes, it's made of movements. And a movement, a real one, does not finish in a day. A stock that is going from 50 to 200 does not make that journey in one spurt. It will shake, it will pause, it will try to throw you off. But if you know the line of least resistance is still upward, your duty is to hold. Do you understand why most men never see those big moves? Because they keep jumping off the train at every station. You see, when you study a chart, you're not just reading prices, you're reading the psychology of the crowd. The crowd buys late, sells early, and loses most of the cream. If you want to build wealth from the market, you must learn to think different. That means not selling just because you've made a little. That means letting your winners do the heavy lifting for you. And that takes patience, more patience than most men can stand. How is your patience when the tape starts playing tricks on you? I'll tell you something that might surprise you. The longer I traded, the less I traded. At first, I was in and out all the time, like a squirrel darting for nuts. But the real money I made was always when I stayed with a position through the long swing. I would study the chart, find the trend, and then ride it until it broke. That was my system, and the market paid me for it. Do you see the difference between trading for activity and trading for profit? Now, holding for bigger gains doesn't mean you sit blind. You must still watch the chart. You must still know when the movement has truly ended. There is a time to get out, but that time is not when you're nervous or greedy. That time is when the market itself tells you the move is over. That's the only signal that matters. Do you trust the tape more than your feelings? I have seen men ruin themselves because they never gave their profits a chance. They made the right read, but they lacked the nerve to hold. And I've seen other men build fortunes simply by having the patience to wait while their trades ripened. The irony is, both groups saw the same chart. But one man had character, and the other did not. Which man do you want to be? Let me give you a picture. Suppose you buy a stock at 30. It climbs to 35, then hesitates, dips back to 33. If you are weak, you'll panic and sell at 33, taking a small profit or maybe a loss. But if you are strong, and you know the line of least resistance is still upward, you'll hold. Later the stock moves to 40, then 50, then 75. The weak man is out with a crumb, while the strong man eats the cake. Isn't that the truth of trading life? So when I tell you the big money is in the sitting, I mean exactly that. I mean you must train yourself to sit tight when you are right. Not just for days, but for weeks, for months, sometimes for years. The market rewards the one who can wait, and waiting is the hardest part. Do you think you can stand it? Small profits feed the ego, big profits build accounts. That's the line, and it's a line that cuts right down the middle of what separates the average trader from the real operator. When you take a small profit, it feels good in the moment. It's like scratching an itch. You tell yourself, I was right, I made money, I won. And in that brief moment you feel clever. Your ego gets a little stroke, a little applause. But ask yourself, does that applause fill your account? Does that feeling put money in the bank? Or is it just a pat on the back you give yourself while the market moves on without you? The truth is that small profits are deceptive. They look like success, but they can be nothing more than distractions. A small profit can trick you into believing you're doing the right thing, when in fact you're robbing yourself of the very reason you entered the trade. You didn't buy a stock to make pennies. You bought it because the chart showed you the potential for a move, a real move. And if you jump out too soon, you've cut your own trade off at the knees. Isn't that what happens? You think you're playing it safe, but in truth, you're weakening your own hand. I've seen traders take pride in making 20 quick points across a dozen little trades. They walk around with their chest puffed up, boasting about how nimble they are. But when the season ends, they have nothing to show for it. They've paid commissions, they've wasted energy, and they've filled their notebooks with scribbles, but their accounts haven't grown. Meanwhile, another trader, maybe less flashy, sat on one position for the whole run of the campaign and came out with more than all the nimble fellows put together. Isn't it strange how the quiet man often ends up with the real money? It's because big profits don't care about your ego. Big profits don't arrive to flatter you, they arrive to reward your patience. But patience is dull, isn't it? It doesn't give you the little rush of clicking the button, pocketing the gain, and telling yourself you're smart. That's why most men don't wait for it. They're too hungry for recognition, too eager to feel right. They want to prove themselves with action when the market only pays for results. Which side of that do you want to be on? When you take a small profit, what are you really saying to yourself? You're saying, I don't trust my judgment enough to let it prove itself. You're saying, I'd rather take this crumb than risk waiting for the loaf. But what is trading if not the art of waiting for the loaf? You study the chart, you study the tape, you pick your moment, and you make your move. If you can't then, sit still and let it play out. What was the point of all that work? Don't you see how self-defeating it is? I can tell you this from my own experience. The money that changed my life never came from a string of small trades. It always came from one or two big positions where I sat tight. The campaigns where I held through the shakes and the noise, that's when my account swelled. That's when I moved from being a trader scratching for daily bread to being a trader building a fortune. And every time I look back, I see the same truth staring me in the face. When I gave in to ego, I got crumbs. When I gave in to patience, I got the cake. Doesn't that sound familiar to you in your own trading? Ego is always in a hurry. Ego whispers, take it now, before it disappears. Ego wants to be right today, this hour, this very minute. But the market doesn't move to please your ego. The market moves in its own time, and the big swings take longer than your feelings want to wait. That's why the trader must choose. Do you want the comfort of being right quickly? Or do you want the reward of being rich eventually? You can't have both. Which do you really want? Think of the farmer. He plants in spring, he tends through summer, and he harvests in fall. If he dug up his crop after the first sprout just to admire it, he'd starve. That's what the trader does when he takes small profits. He digs up the seed to pat himself on the back for planting it, instead of waiting until it bears fruit. The farmer knows better. Why can't the trader learn the same lesson? Now, don't misunderstand me. There are times to cut a trade. If the chart tells you the line of least resistance has broken, if the market itself has changed its mind, you must act. That's not ego, that's discipline. But selling just because you want to feel smart, selling just because you fear losing the little you've gained, that is weakness. Pure and simple. And weakness has no place in the market. Wouldn't you agree? When I say small profits feed the ego, I mean they keep you busy without making you rich. They satisfy your pride but not your purse. They let you say, I made money today, but they don't let you retire from the game. Big profits, on the other hand, are silent. They don't come often, but when they do, they change your entire position in life. Big profits build accounts because they compound. A 50% move doubles your stake, and with that doubled stake, the next move doubles you again. That's how fortunes are built step by step, campaign by campaign. You'll never build that kind of fortune clipping coupons from every trade. Do you see how the arithmetic proves the point? The temptation for small profits is always strongest when you're just beginning. You don't trust yourself yet. You don't trust the market. So you take anything you can get and you call it success. But as you grow, as you begin to see the rhythm of the tape, you learn that small wins are just noise. You stop chasing applause and start chasing real movement. And the moment you make that shift, your whole career changes. You stop being a speculator of the crowd and start being a trader of the trend. Have you felt the turning point yet? Or are you still stuck in the habit of taking crumbs? I'll give you an example. A stock moves from 20 to 24 and you sell. You pocket 4 points, you pat yourself on the back, but the stock doesn't stop. It goes to 40, then 60, then 100. You look back and realize that your 4 points were nothing compared to the 80 you missed. That little victory, that stroke of ego, cost you the very thing you were working for. And the worst part is, you can't buy back in. Emotion won't let you. You'll watch it climb without you, and your ego, the same ego that urged you to sell, will now stop you from re-entering. Haven't you felt that sting before? That's why you must make up your mind. You must decide whether you want to feed your ego or your account. You can't do both. If you want to prove yourself right a dozen times a week, take your little profits and be content. But if you want to build wealth, you must hold for the big moves, and that means enduring discomfort, enduring doubt, and enduring the whispers of ego that beg you to cash in early. Can you hold out against yourself? The great paradox of this business is that doing less makes you more. Less action, less showing off, less grabbing at crumbs. More waiting, more patience, more discipline. The quiet operator, the one who holds his tongue and holds his line, he's the one who walks away with the fortune. The noisy operator, the one who brags about his daily wins, he's the one who ends up empty. Which one do you want to be remembered as? The market pays the man with character, not the man with cleverness alone. That truth is sharper than most traders care to admit. Everyone wants to believe that brains will win the game, that if You can read a chart better than the next fellow. You'll come out ahead. But I've seen the brightest men in Wall Street lose everything because their character wasn't fit for trading. And I've seen men who weren't half as clever build fortunes simply because they had the backbone to hold, the discipline to wait, and the strength to act when the tape demanded it. Doesn't that tell you something? Cleverness can get you into a good trade, but character is what keeps you in it. You can spot the line of least resistance. You can read the tape perfectly, but if you lack the nerve to hold when it counts, or the humility to cut when you're wrong, all that cleverness goes to waste. It's like a man with a fine ship but no compass. He may sail beautifully for a while, but without direction, he ends up on the rocks. Isn't that the fate of so many traders who talk smart but never last? I've seen men who could predict turns in the market almost like magic. They would call the top, call the bottom, dazzle a room with their talk, but their accounts didn't grow. Why? Because they always wanted to be clever. They sold too soon to prove they were right, or they doubled down on a bad call because they couldn't admit they were wrong. Their intellect made them slaves to their own pride. Character would have told them, sit tight when you're right, cut quick when you're wrong. But cleverness doesn't like to hear that. Have you noticed how your own pride resists the simplest rules? The market punishes ego harder than it punishes ignorance. A man of average intelligence but steady character can survive and prosper in the market, while a genius with no discipline will ruin himself. That's because trading is not a battle of brains against the world. It's a battle of your own will against yourself. If you don't control yourself, the market will do it for you, and it will cost you dearly. How often have you found yourself knowing what to do, but failing to do it? That gap between knowing and doing is where character lives. Patience is a form of character, so is humility, so is courage. The market demands all three: patience to wait for the right setup, humility to admit when you're wrong, and courage to hold or act when the tape tells you to. Cleverness alone cannot supply those traits. You can be clever enough to draw the perfect lines on a chart, but when the market shakes, cleverness won't keep you from selling too soon. Character will, and when the stock collapses against you, cleverness will invent excuses, but only character will make you cut the loss clean. Which side of yourself do you trust more? The clever mind or the disciplined will? I'll tell you what character looks like in the tape. It's the man who doesn't flinch when his stock pauses or shakes, because he knows the main movement is intact. It's the man who doesn't brag about a profit, because he knows the move isn't over yet. It's the man who takes a loss without excuses and without delay, because he knows that cutting losses is part of survival. It's the man who doesn't need applause, who doesn't chase excitement, who sits still when others run around. That's the kind of man the market pays. Isn't that the kind of trader you'd rather be? Cleverness, on the other hand, loves to be seen. It loves to talk, to boast, to predict. It loves to say, "I told you so." But the market doesn't pay you for being right once. It pays you for being disciplined every time. One clever call won't build your fortune. 100 disciplined trades will. And yet most men chase the cleverness because it flatters their ego. They want to look smart in front of others more than they want to build their accounts. Do you see how easy it is to fall into that trap? I remember times when my own cleverness got the better of me. I would spot a turn, act on it, and be right. But instead of sitting tight, I would get itchy, sell too soon, and then watch the move continue without me. What good was my cleverness then? All it did was flatter me for a moment and rob me for a season. It was only when I learned to shut my mouth, quiet my pride, and let the market do its work that I began to earn. Character kept me in trades that my cleverness would have talked me out of. Have you ever seen your cleverness talk you right out of your own profit? Another thing about character, it doesn't panic. Cleverness can panic, because cleverness is always busy thinking, calculating, second-guessing. But character stays steady. It doesn't need to know every tick. It doesn't need to prove anything. It just follows the plan. That steadiness is worth more than all the smart talk in the world. because the market is not about constant brilliance, it's about consistent execution. Isn't that what makes the difference between the lucky trader and the professional? The market is full of clever men who never learn this. They hop from strategy to strategy, always looking for the next trick, the next method, the next secret. They're restless, never satisfied, always convinced the answer lies in some new clever scheme. But the market doesn't pay for schemes. It pays for patience, discipline, and consistency. And that is character, plain and simple. So ask yourself, are you building your character, or just chasing clever tricks? Consider the difference between the gambler and the trader. The gambler thrives on cleverness. He loves the thrill of the quick play, the pride of the smart guess. But the gambler never wins in the long run. The trader, the real trader, thrives on character. He can sit still. He can take losses without shame. He can let profits ride without boasting. Over time, the market pays him, because the market respects character even when it mocks cleverness. Haven't you seen gamblers vanish while the quiet men endure? What's dangerous is that cleverness feels so good in the moment. It feels sharp, exciting, alive. Character feels boring. It feels like waiting, like repetition, like restraint. But boring builds wealth. Excitement builds losses. And this is why the crowd never learns the lesson, because the crowd prefers to feel clever than to be rich. Which do you prefer? The truth is, most traders fail, not because they don't know enough, but because they don't have the character to apply what they know. They can draw the chart, they can see the setup, but when the moment comes, they flinch. Or they grab the profit too early, or they hold the loss too long, not because they're stupid, but because they lack discipline. They lack character. If you've ever wondered why two men with the same knowledge end up with different results, the answer is character. Isn't that the dividing line you've seen again and again? The market is the great character test. It strips away excuses, it strips away appearances, and it shows you exactly who you are. If you're impatient, the market will expose it. If you're greedy, the market will expose it. If you're proud, the market will expose it. And only by facing those truths, only by strengthening your character, can you survive. Cleverness won't save you. Only discipline will. And that is why I say the market pays the man with character, not the man with cleverness alone. The big money is made in the main swing, not the small turns. That is the cornerstone of this business, and it's the truth most traders never truly grasp. They are so busy trying to catch every little move, every tick, every fluctuation, that they wear themselves out chasing shadows. The market teases them with a point here, 2 points there, and they grab it like children snatching candy. But when the real movement comes, they're already out of the market, sitting on the sidelines, too exhausted or too timid to take part. Haven't you seen yourself sell too soon, only to watch the stock run for miles after you've left the train? I had to learn this the hard way, because in the beginning, I thought the game was about cleverness, about quick profits and nimble trades. I would buy in the morning, sell in the afternoon, take my little winnings and think I was a genius. But when I looked back over the weeks, I saw I wasn't getting anywhere. The ledger never grew in proportion to my effort. I was always in motion but never moving ahead. I was like a man trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. Doesn't that sound like the mistake most traders make? The truth is, the big money does not come from guessing the little zigzags. Those are the market's tricks. It's bait for the impatient. The real reward comes when you catch the main current, when you put yourself on the side of the big trend and let it carry you. A stock that goes from 50 to 200 doesn't do it in a straight line. It dances, it feints, it retraces. And every one of those moves is designed to shake you out if you're too focused on the little turns. But if you know the main swing is up, and you have the patience to stay with it, you'll ride the move that makes your fortune. Can you see the difference between trading for crumbs and trading for the cake? I once took a position in a stock at 20. It rose to 24, then dipped back to 22. My younger self would have panicked, sold at 22, and congratulated myself on escaping with a little gain. But by then I had learned the lesson. I studied the tape, saw that the main swing was still upward, and I held on, The stock didn't just go back to 24, it went to 40, then 60, and finally 100. The whole time, the tape kept trying to trick me into jumping off, but I sat tight. That one position made me more than 100 of my little scalps ever had. Isn't it remarkable how one big swing can outweigh a year of small trades? When I say the big money is in the main swing, I don't mean you never act. You must act, but only in harmony with the main trend. If the tide is rising, you buy and you hold. If the tide is falling, you sell and you hold. What ruins traders is the habit of fighting the tide, trying to snatch a little profit from every ripple. They get chewed up in the cross currents, never realizing that the only game worth playing is aligning yourself with the flow. Haven't you noticed how often your losses come from going against the larger movement? The market gives its fortune to the man who learns to sit tight in the right swing. But sitting tight isn't glamorous. It doesn't give you daily excitement. It doesn't let you brag at lunch about your clever trades. It just quietly builds your account while others wear themselves out. That's why most traders can't do it. They're addicted to action. They'd rather keep busy than keep profitable. But the wise trader knows the market doesn't pay you for effort. It pays you for patience. Which would you rather be, busy or wealthy? Every great operator I've known made his fortune from the main swing. They didn't get rich chasing one-point moves. They got rich identifying the big turn, putting themselves on the right side, and then holding on while the crowd was shaken out. That's the difference between the professional and the amateur. The amateur wants to catch everything. The professional wants to catch the one thing that matters. Do you want to play every note in the market, or do you want to master the melody? The small turns appeal to your nerves. They keep you glued to the tape, sweating over every fluctuation. But the big swing appeals to your vision. It forces you to step back, to see the market as a whole, to understand that wealth is not built on noise but on trend. It's a matter of perspective. The crowd focuses on today. The operator focuses on the campaign, and that's why the crowd always loses to the operator. Haven't you noticed how your best profits come when you stopped worrying about every tick and trusted the bigger move? Now, it's not easy to stay with the main swing. The market will tempt you at every step. It will show you small gains and whisper, "Take it before it slips away." It will show you small losses and scream, "Get out before it's too late." But if you've read the tape correctly, if you've judged the line of least resistance, your task is to silence those voices and hold your ground. That is where character comes in. Cleverness might get you into the move, but only patience and courage will keep you in it. Do you have that kind of character in your trading? The small turns are like noise in a song. If you focus on them, you miss the music. The main swing is the melody. That's where the beauty lies, and that's where the profit lies. But to hear it, you must ignore the noise, and that takes discipline. Most traders fail not because they can't read a chart, but because they can't ignore the chatter of the market. They're so focused on being right in the moment that they never allow themselves to be right in the long run. Isn't that the trap you've seen in your own trading? I'll tell you another thing. The small turns are dangerous because they feed your ego. You sell for a quick profit, and you feel smart. You think you've outwitted the market, but the market doesn't care about your cleverness. It only cares about whether you sat through the move. When the stock doubles, and you're out with a 5% gain, your ego may be satisfied, but your account is not. That's why you must choose, do you want to feed your pride, or do you want to feed your wealth? The main swing has another advantage. It reduces your mistakes. When you're chasing every little turn, you're making constant decisions, and every decision is a chance to be wrong. But when you're riding the big swing, your work is simpler. You get in, you hold, and you watch. You only act when the trend itself is broken. Fewer decisions mean fewer mistakes. Fewer mistakes mean bigger profits. Isn't that a more sensible way to trade? So remember this, the small turns are for the crowd. They'll keep you busy, they'll make you feel clever, but they won't make you rich. The big swing is for the operator. It's slow, it's steady, it's demanding, but it pays in fortunes. And the market, in the end, always pays the man who has the patience to wait for the big swing and the courage to hold it. The rest are just playing for pennies while the real money passes them by. Holding requires discipline to ignore noise and trust the main trend. That is where most traders lose the game. The noise is everywhere: the chatter of the crowd, the daily fluctuations on the tape, the rumors in the street, the headlines that shout danger one day and promise riches the next. If you allow yourself to be swayed by all that noise, you'll never stay long enough in a position to see the real profit. The market always gives you reasons to doubt, reasons to flinch, reasons to cut your trade short, and that is why discipline is the trader's greatest weapon. Without it, no amount of cleverness or analysis will save you. Haven't you felt how the noise tugs at your nerves the moment you're in a trade? I learned early that the market never moves in a straight line. Even when you are absolutely right about the main trend, the market will throw in reverses, pauses, sudden shakes that make you question everything. Those moves aren't accidents. They are the market's way of testing whether you have the character to stay put. The crowd sees a dip and panics. The disciplined trader sees the same dip and stays calm, because he knows the main trend hasn't changed.